Hi, my name is Lakana and I'm a senior at Rush Henrietta Senior High School. In 2018, I was on vacation in Virginia Beach. One of the days was extremely rainy, so we decided to go see a movie in theaters. Me and my entire family went to go see Crazy Rich Asians as it was fairly new at the time and seemed to have good reviews. But honestly, that movie changed my whole perspective on Hollywood and how I see myself. It was the first movie I saw that had someone that looked like me in it. And when I was a kid, seeing a positive Asian representation that wasn't extremely stereotypical was quite rare. Yes, there were movies that had Asian characters, but they were typically associated with their culture instead of being their own character. It was like their culture, even when it wasn't right, was their entire character. I felt completely engrossed on the topic and have strived to find positive Asian representation in every movie I watch. Seeing the transformation and the history behind this progression is so fascinating. Therefore, my capstone project is Asian representation in Hollywood. Let's do a quick timeline. In the beginning, before 1960, Asian markets were not very important to Hollywood as they did not drive as much revenue as other countries. But when they were, it was very stereotypical and racist. For example, in a movie called Dragon Scene, where Katharine Hepburn is doing yellowface to show the message that Chinese peasants are classy and Japanese people are horrible villains, show how the only representation of Asians were not typically positive and very racist. And during this time, only 30% of revenue was earned overseas. Then between 1960 and 1979, these racist portrayals shifted towards Vietnamese people as the rise of Vietnam War emerged. It kind of seemed like whoever was the enemy of the time was the face of propaganda shown in Hollywood, and they typically showed Vietnamese people as corrupt and violent. But during the 1980s was when this really changed. Trade globalization brought Hollywood movies into Asian theaters. With economic growth, people had more free time and money to see movies in theaters, along with the development of technology such as video and cable, creating a whole new market that allowed Hollywood films to thrive. This brought the amount of revenue earned overseas to be about 50%. In films like 16 Candles with their racist portrayal of an Asian exchange student named Long Duck Dong, there were definitely some negatives, but there were also some positives, like in Karate Kid, which was a film about bonding, which was very heartwarming for many viewers, and The Killing Fields, which showed a very accurate depiction of the Khmer Rouge, where Hai S. Noor became the first Asian to win Best Supporting Actor. My father was a survivor of the Khmer Rouge, which was a genocide in Cambodia, killing about 1/4 of the population. I remember watching The Killing Fields with my dad, and throughout the movie, him telling me all the stories of what happened during the time. I'm sure it was so meaningful for him to see a movie with accurate depiction of what actually happened. And then it was so meaningful for me to have that experience with him later. It just kind of showed how important it was to have these kinds of movies exist. And during the 1990s, we have started to have Asian actors portraying characters of their own race while not the same ethnicity. We have Asians playing their own characters, but these movies are still very stereotypical with poor English, Asian fetishes, and martial arts. But there were some movies like The Joy Luck Club that were praised for their unique portrayal of Asians. During the early 2000s, when I was born, many new portrayal of Asians emerged, like in Babel with the rebellious deaf Japanese girl. But there were many racist and stereotypical portrayals of Asians that still existed, like in Mean Girls, where they seem to portray the quote-unquote cool Asians, where they can't speak English and they say derogatory terms. And while I never processed these things when I was a kid, looking back on it now, it kind of makes sense on why some kids treated me the way that they did. But during the 2010s and 2020 was when this really all started to shift. A study from the University of Southern California shows that in Hollywood, not much has really changed, but the 1,600 of the top grossing films from 2007 to 2022 show that the number of speaking roles of representation in terms of gender, race, LGBTQ+, and or disabilities did not actually move or kind of shifted backwards, with the exception of Asian characters, with Asian characters moving from 3.4% to 15.9%, Black characters moving from 13% to 13.4%, and Hispanic characters moving from 3.3% to 5.2%. Wondering, why did this change happen in the first place? Well, first of all, the cost of creating a Hollywood movie has dramatically increased because of new special effects costing around $90 million to create on average. Because of this, producers strive to cut costs where they could and move their projects overseas to lower labor costs and take advantage of looser union regulations. These runaway productions are becoming extremely popular, especially in China, because they cost 1/8 of what they would cost in the US, supporting the rise of Asian representation. Also, the hashtag Stop Asian Hate movement, which related to the acts of violence done against Asian Americans during COVID-19, helped people push for more Asian representation on screen, hopefully to evoke empathy for Asians. I remember seeing all this violence done against Asian Americans during this time, and it was genuinely heartbreaking to see my people from my community getting hurt simply because of their race due to an event that wasn't even their fault. But on the flip side, people were seeking out new content while stuck at home rather than what Hollywood was putting out. Many people started to prefer foreign films, with streaming services quickly adapting by offering more international content. When Parasite won the Golden Globe for Best Foreign Film, the director Bong Joon-ho said that once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you'll be introduced to so many more amazing films. With many Americans following his advice, many shows like Squid Games and RRR became the most streamed content on their platforms. Then, the surge of book adaptations written by Asian authors like To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han, The Summer I Turned Pretty, and Interior China by Charles Yu created a rise in Asian representation in Hollywood as these authors created characters who looked just like them. In addition to this, the rise of Asian behind-the-scenes staff has created original films and shows like Beef and Never Have I Ever that depicted their real-life experiences. Seeing all this new content was extremely influential because this mostly happened when I was in middle school. I remember being younger and kind of being uncomfortable with my culture, but seeing so many depictions of people who looked like me and had similar experiences as me was so empowering to see. As I said, the shift really started to happen during the 2010s and 2020s, but let's look at the people who really paved the way for Hollywood. Lucy Liu grew up wanting to act but faced many rejections because of the very limited roles for an Asian actor. She describes that heart-wrenching feeling by saying, "I struggled against so many forces, both the lack of belief from my family and the lack of opportunity in the industry. There was so much pressure from every side, it almost created this sort of rocket." But then she explains later in the interview that that's really what pushed her to succeed. And for many viewers in the US, Liu was the first Asian woman on screen with roles as Alex Monday in Charlie's Angels and Oren Ishii in Kill Bill. While they were definitely not the most complex or rich characters in the film, her portrayal of the characters paved the way for diversity of Asians in Hollywood. And if it wasn't for her perseverance through these stereotypical roles, we wouldn't have the privilege of picking roles or having opportunities in the industry. Then, as globalization emerged, many Hollywood executives used stars and producers from other countries. The best example has gotta be Jackie Chan, who was the most popular star in East Asia in the 1970s. While he was huge in Hong Kong, his efforts to break into Hollywood failed twice. But once Hollywood executives let him do what made him famous in Hong Kong, we saw the rise of iconic movies like Rush Hour and Shanghai Noon. The combination of martial arts, comedy, and stunts brought in millions of fans as they've never seen anything like it. And while it was different from what was normal in Hollywood, that's what made it so iconic. These Jackie Chan films became this transnational, recognizable style. And when I was younger, I remember only really knowing a couple of Asian actors because there weren't not that many in Hollywood. And he, along with Lucy Liu, were the people I looked up to growing up because they pioneered a majorly white industry. I never saw people who looked like me on the big screen, so when I could see them, I felt so excited. Now, let's actually talk about the 2010s and the 2020s. There were 3 main milestones for Asian representation on screen, which were Crazy Rich Asians, Everything Everywhere at Once, and TV shows on Hulu and Netflix. Crazy Rich Asians became the first film in Hollywood to have a mainly Asian cast since 1993, following that being Farewell and Parasite, which performed amazing at the box office and won tremendous awards. Even with the racism from many influential people against it, Everything Everywhere All at Once was a box office smash hit, becoming the most awarded film at all time. Then, on TV, Fresh Off the Boat, Squid Games, and Kim Convenience all had many successes, becoming iconic pieces representing Asians. K-pop has really paved the way for Korean content and led to Korean dramas and shows becoming really successful. These successes allowed directors like John M. Chu to direct other films like Wicked and In the Heights, which has had the most diverse casts. While we still have ways to go, these milestones led to what Asians look like in Hollywood now, and these actors who were originally told there was no place for them in Hollywood, no matter how good of an actor they were. They had the opportunities to grow their careers and become as successful as their white counterparts, and I truly believe that we have defied all denial that we could be successful, and it genuinely heals a part of me to see someone on screen that looks exactly like me. This is really important because Asian characters were portrayed as weak, oriental, and nerdy, even when casted as the main characters. It's so important that we expand diversity in film and TV as they impact mental health, identity, and race relations. People in the industry should stop portraying Asians in this way and avoid racism, gender stereotypes, and other negative images. Personal identity is heavily influenced by what they see in the media, especially at a young age. I know personally mine was. Film and TV have become places where stories can come to life. Movies like Crazy Rich Asians were extremely moving for a lot of Asians as they've never seen themselves on the big screen. A lot of Asian characters in movies and TV shows are stereotyped as super nerds with tiger parents. This has framed them as the model minority when in reality there's so many subsections of the Asian community. The stereotyping is usually done by white writers and directors where they have these hardworking traits, but they're rarely seen as leaders. According to the Harvard Business Review, the least likely group to be promoted in management roles are Asians, which is due to a lack of representation in media to reinforce the ideas. Most of the time, Asian representation in Hollywood is backed up by Asians behind the scenes like casting directors, producers, and writers who have more advocacy for Asian stories. However, a lot of discrimination still exists in this realm as large networks have created diversity training programs for the opportunity to work on a TV show just to have their ways subsidized. So Asian writers are still not receiving fair opportunity to succeed in the industry. However, on platforms like YouTube, Asian content creators have become the most popular with huge followings. From people like Wong Productions, Michelle Pham, and Nika Higa, it goes to show that when presented with equal opportunity, they genuinely can thrive. I really feel connected to this topic because I remember the first time I saw Crazy Rich Asians in theaters. It was the first time I really felt myself connected to a character. I didn't ever see anyone on screen that wasn't a big stereotype of my culture, so to see a whole movie that showed characters that looked just like me made me feel so much pride. These actors, producers, and directors have really paved the way for Asian representation in Hollywood and have made me truly believe I can do anything.